Hello, the guest today is Paul Sellew, class of 1980. He's an entrepreneur, founder of Little Leaf Farms. So, hi, Paul. What does your startup do?
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, great to be with you today. So, Little Leaf Farms, I started about 10, 11 years ago, and we have high tech greenhouses now in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and soon to be Tennessee. And we're the country's largest grower of baby leaf greens grown in controlled environment. And 10, 11 years ago, there was really nothing being grown. It was mostly just head lettuce. And I made the decision to look at the baby leaf category because that's where it was growing fastest. And now we service 8,000 grocery stores, service half the country, and employ over 800 people.
Wow. So it's like over multiple states as well, like the
Half
expansion.
the United States and Canada.
Wow, that's a big coverage. And then, so are these like? I'm trying to picture. Is it like a field of lettuce? Like what does it
No,
look
it's a
like?
greenhouse. So picture a greenhouse. I was a horticulture major, at Cal's, right? So their greenhouses on campus, they're glass roofs, let the sun in. And then we control that environment and grow hydroponically, meaning you grow without soil. And as a result, then we don't need to spray anything on our crop. It's pesticide, herbicide, fungicide free. And obviously, based on this current cyclospora outbreak that's sweeping the United States right now, which has been linked to field lettuce, CEA, controlled environment ag lettuce, grown by like Little Leaf and others, is absolutely safe to eat.
Is that because like the field lettuce, the disease it spreads over out?
Well, it's not a controlled environment, right? So, you know, basically they don't have the control over the two principal vectors, water, right? Oftentimes contamination can get into the irrigation water, and you don't have the same level of control with over your people. So those are the two major differences compared to what I do versus conventional field agriculture.
Gotcha. So it's like like how much control is it? Like is it like do they have to put on certain clothing when they walk in so it doesn't contaminate? Like how much
Yeah,
control?
no, absolutely. It's an overpressure facility, so you have to go through a disinfection process to enter the greenhouse. No humans touch the product from seeding to harvest. And then the water primarily is what falls on the roof. We get about 48 inches of rain here a year in the eastern US. And so we capture all that in adjacent line basins. And then that's our primary source of irrigation water. And that water comes in, it first goes through UV disinfection so that you kill all biology. And that way you have a pure, clean rainwater, to irrigate our crop. And then again, we don't spray any pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides. So absolutely clean, fresh, safe to eat.
Gotcha. And is there a lot of like robotics in there as well? Like how does it compare to like
Yeah,
field
the,
lettuce?
the, the plants move through the greenhouse from seeding to harvest. We use what's called a mobile gutter system. So literally the plants move. So it's very different. Could not be more different than what you see in the field where you plant a seed in one location and it grows out.
It
So
doesn't move.
yeah, we basically, plant on one end of the greenhouse and the mobile gutters move. They space as the plants get bigger automatically, and that allows the perfect environment for the plant to grow. And then about day 24, day 25, we harvest the plant, package it, and get it in the stores within 24 to 36 hours.
Gotcha. And it also like reduces variability, right? So if there's a drought, you could add more water to it, so then you can keep them
Well,
constant.
I mean, we store the water from all rain events, so we never run out of water.
Okay.
For all the obvious reasons, farmers can't run out of water, Tony, right? Not good. So, in the case of drought, we're backed up with municipal water systems that are human grade drinking water. And so we always have backup. And so from that standpoint, we're never concerned about running out.
So what are like the trade-offs between field lettuce and controlled environment agriculture lettuce then?
Well, I started it and I was
Mhm.
motivated by work that Cornell had done in this
Oh,
area.
really?
There was
Wow.
a professor who's no longer with us now named Lou Albright, and he coined the term peri-urban agriculture. Right. And what he meant by that the perimeters of all urban areas were traditionally farms. Now they're suburbs. Right.
Mhm.
So returning of those areas with very different production systems than growing in the soil. Like I am 30 times as productive per acre in growing output in my greenhouses than a field farmer.
Oh,
but you
really?
are returning those perimeters of urban areas called peri-urban agriculture back to their traditional role to feed the city. So when I got started 10, 11 years ago, virtually 100% of the lettuce that people were eating in North America were grown in two valleys over 3,000 miles away from where I live outside of Boston, Salinas,
Wow.
California, and Yuma, Arizona. So the idea of eating fresh lettuce, it was just simply not possible. That lettuce was grown there and then transported across the country, which took a number of days. So therefore, the whole idea of fresh lettuce, forget about that. Then we would get it, get into distribution, and buy the product 7, 8, 9 days after it was harvested. And you contrast that with what I do, harvest 7 days a week, package, deliver, get it into the store within 24 to 36 hours, and let the consumer enjoy truly fresh lettuce, which they were really unable to do prior.
That's wild. That would come all the way from California. So as
Yeah,
you like expand into like Tennessee, then you're able to service Tennessee as well within 24
yeah.
hours.
I mean, we serve the Southeast and market, which is really expanding. But if you think about like that business model that was in place 10, 11 years ago and still dominates today, what California and Arizona don't have is water, right? A lettuce leaf is about 95% water. So they're using groundwater. That groundwater is a non-renewable natural resource, pumping it out of the ground, growing lettuce. And in effect, when you're eating lettuce from the West Coast, you're drinking the water that was transported across the country in the form of a lettuce leaf
Gee,
so that we can have lettuce. So I just thought that there was a better way to do it, and that's what we've been able to demonstrate with Little Leaf Farms with our approach. Right now, we're the fastest growing packaged salad brand in the country, and we're the number 4 leading brand of packaged salad in the United States.
that's incredible. So then like the rainwater also drops in Tennessee as well. So the rainwater in
Yep,
Tennessee stays
over
in
four over
Tennessee.
4 feet of 48 inches of rain there. And that's millions and millions of gallons of water that falls out of the sky for free, right? So we just capture that and very practically use it. And that's the other reason why we like greenhouses, because in addition to the water that falls out of the sky for free, we also have the sun. There has been an advent recently of what they call vertical farming, which, the idea around that was having multiple layers and build vertical farms in urban areas to basically, feed people in the city. For the most part, it has failed. It was actually the brainchild of a Columbia University professor, Dixon Despommier. And of course, what does Columbia know about agriculture compared to Cornell, right? So
Yeah.
I listened to Lou Albright. Was educated at Cornell, and their approach was peri-urban agriculture using high-tech greenhouses, and that strategy has proven out to be successful.
Like if you like map out like the cost of like growing it, the cost of farming it, like taking care of the plant. Like did the control environment agriculture change like the financial statement of like a farm? Like how
Yeah,
did it
I'm
change
I'm
it?
basically operating right now 70 acres of high-tech greenhouses. So my cost of production is on the East Coast comparable to the West Coast products delivered to the East Coast. Remember, they have huge transportation costs to transport that lettuce thousands of miles, and it also, uses up time, and so you don't get fresh product as a result. So not only am I comparably priced, but I'm also higher quality.
Was there like a technology shift that made it possible to do, or was it just
Yeah,
like a
you
mindset?
needed to do it at scale. Basic economics, economies of scale. That makes sense, but you need to do it in a very automated way. Like our greenhouses, you walk into them, you won't see any people. You'll just see millions and millions of plants of lettuce. And then we run 7 days a week, and then we're able to manage our costs so that we're comparable to the West Coast product, even though, building our greenhouses are quite expensive.
Hmm.
So there's big investment. We've invested many millions of dollars to build our greenhouses. But as
Hmm.
far as cost of production, we're comparable to the West Coast product
Gotcha. So like
and a
the
much higher quality and much more fresh.
yeah, so labor costs would go down, and then also the transportation costs would go down. But but
Correct.
but then yeah, okay. So like what are the costs that go up on the I guess greenhouses? You had to build the greenhouse.
It's
Then you
capital. You need to
capital.
have the capital investment to upfront to build the greenhouse. And, at the scale that we are, that's a multi-million dollar investment. So that is the trade-off. But, from the standpoint of, the unit economics and the operating costs, quite competitive.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So the automation within the greenhouse too, did you have to design it yourself, or were there like already components where you could use to
Yeah,
design?
what we did, we were the designer of the overall greenhouse because when you look at how to build a successful greenhouse, you need to have the automated growing system. You need to be able to manage the climate, right? And then you also need to manage your irrigation and fertigation system, right? And then, so what we did is that we worked with vendors who we felt were the best in the world in what they respectively did. And then we designed the overall facility, integrated the different technological components together. And the result has been we have the highest performing greenhouses in.
Super. And then like the same greenhouse in New York, in Boston, could be shipped to like Tennessee, and that would work there as well because it's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
controlled.
You have different climates. Greenhouses are tied to the climate that you operate in, so that you have to understand that because you're trying to, clearly have the climate not deviate inside the greenhouse no matter what the temperature is outside. So that means, for instance, in Massachusetts, we're heating in the wintertime and we're
Yeah.
cooling in the summertime because we want our plants to not know the difference, right? We're trying to control that environment so the plants can just grow and, and be happy.
Yeah. So there's a temperature, there's humidity as well. Like
Yeah,
there's
we,
a
we manage everything. We manage temperature, we manage humidity, we manage CO2 levels in the greenhouse, all of that, year
interesting.
round, 24/7.
Are you able to manage the sun as well? Like how much sun the lettuce gets as well?
Yeah, ironically, this time of year, come late spring into summer, there's actually too much sun. So we have sunscreens that
To
we
block out the.
literally, yeah, we don't need all of the sun. So what we do is we block about 25% of it. And that also deflects and doesn't allow the thermal energy to come in because again the sun offers two benefits, right? But it depends on what time of year it is. It's the thermal energy, so it will help heat the greenhouse. That's really important 3 of the 4 seasons of the year. But during summertime, we don't need that thermal energy, but we want the photosynthetic energy. And those are different wavelengths within the electromagnetic spectrum that you get from the sun. So we use screening techniques to basically let what we want in from the sun and not let other parts that we don't want from the sun, in particular now, which is the infrared and thermal energy of the sun.
Okay. Is that because the lettuce might not like it, or might get like sunburned, or might
What
get
can
like what's
happen is
the
that, the greenhouse effect, right? Shortwave radiation comes down into the atmosphere, bounces off the earth, long wave, and a portion of that thermal energy is kept, which is why there's life on planet Earth. A greenhouse is a microcosm of that. Shortwave radiation comes down through the glass, bounces off the ground, comes back as long wave, and then you capture in a greenhouse some of that thermal energy.
back again?
So in the summertime, that's too much. So that's why we block a portion of the sun's energy because we don't need it, right? But then that's not true in the fall, the winter, and the spring,
Yeah.
where we're looking for the benefits of thermal energy in addition to the photosynthetic spectrum that you get from the sun.
That makes sense. Yeah, this is like I went to Cornell College of Engineering, and there's like mechanical engineers to do robots. There's also like biological engineer to choose like the right lettuce. There's like chemical engineer, I guess, for the water that goes in the thing. But like, how much of the innovation was in each individual discipline
Well, I
of
mean, what
engineering?
we do, it's really a merger of engineering, because if you didn't know what we were doing, you would think we're a manufacturing operation, but we're a
Okay.
farm, right? And that's biology, and you need to understand plants, right? And so therefore, the merger of what we've done, I think better, as good as anybody, if not better, is merging the environment to optimize the biology of the plants that we grow and engineer the systems so that it is done at the most cost efficient manner, right? Incorporating automation and all of that. So biologists and engineers, they don't always think alike.
Hmm.
And that's always an interesting challenge in getting them to work together for the common good. But I think we've done that pretty well.
Gotcha. That makes sense. How did you decide, like, if you designed the greenhouse, do you operate the greenhouse as well? Like, how do you decide,
Yeah,
like,
no,
at what
our
point do you
business
stop?
model is very simple. We're design, build, own, operate, right? We design it, we build it, we own it, and we operate it, right? and under a grow, package, and market business model, right? So we do not produce any kind of private label product. It's only Little Leaf Farms. And I'm so thankful we did that because now with this cyclospora event sweeping the country, we've gone out very publicly and said, our product is clean. Our
Mhm.
product is okay to eat. We've explained how we, disinfect the water, how we don't spray anything on our lettuce, how we control the environment, how people are not in contact with the product because it's an automated system. So I'm so thankful that we kept our label out there so people know they have an option for truly safe lettuce.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like you control the whole channel all the way to the consumer.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Do you sell like direct to consumer as well with like a website
No,
sales?
no, we basically go through food service distributors that then resell the product to restaurants and institutions. I think Cornell, hopefully they carry our lettuce.
Hmm.
And also we sell directly to the grocery stores.
Gotcha, gotcha. It's because then the grocery store has like storage places for to keep
Yeah, they
the
have
lettuce,
distribution
so
centers
we
that
don't
we
have to worry
ship
about that.
to, and then from their distribution center, they deliver daily to the grocery
Gotcha.
stores.
That makes sense. But you control the greenhouse because it's like hard to operate. So a farmer who's used to open field lettuce, they wouldn't know how
Totally
to operate the
different.
greenhouse. It's
Totally
totally
different.
different.
It's almost as different as night and day.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you have to operate it yourself as.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Huh, that's really interesting. And then like when you're choosing like which state to go to, do you choose it based on if the criteria fit a certain model? Like
Well,
what?
I started in Massachusetts. I mean, right now, Boston is the farthest East Coast city from the West Coast. So,
Yeah,
therefore, we had I call not the benefit, but the opposite of that. We had the problem of getting the least fresh lettuce from the West Coast, right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
it just made sense to start here. This is also where I live, prove
Mm-hmm.
out the business model. And then we have a lot of traction in the greater Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. So the next place was Northeast Pennsylvania and McAdoo, PA. And then now we have a lot of growth down in the Southeast and the Midwest. And Tennessee is a really good location to service those two markets.
Gotcha. And that all has the transportation cost from California, so that costs a lot. So they all share the
Of
same.
course, yeah. And I mean, we're up against the West Coast right now. Control environment, leafy greens, like 10, 11 years ago, was closer to zero than 1% of the market. Now it's over 8% of the market. So there's been a lot of growth over the last 10 years. But that means 92%, is still supplied by the West Coast field growers, right?
Mm,
And that's Salinas, that's Yuma, and that's also they have Mexican production. So
gotcha.
we think there's a lot of room to grow. And, what we have seen is the model of greenhouse tomatoes. 30 plus years ago, greenhouse tomatoes were single digits as far as the percent of the market. And then because it was a better product, tastier and appeared better, now certain tomato varieties are 60 to 80% of the market. So
Wow.
the market has really shifted to CEA, greenhouse grown, and I
Okay.
think we're in the early days of seeing that same transition with leafy greens.
It's incredible. So like the tomatoes that were grown before, like did that use the same technology as like the lettuce? Like what made it like
Well, I
tomatoes
mean, it
30
went
years ago
from
to lettuce now?
field grown tomatoes, right? And what happened is that oftentimes they were picked green and ethylene gassed, right? So
Okay.
that you just didn't have the same flavor. Where in a greenhouse grown tomato, they're able to sort of get it ripe on the vine and then pick that and get it into the store. So, anybody who knows anything about tomatoes, you'd rather eat a vine ripened tomato than a green tomato that's been
Ye-
ethylene gassed to force it to ripen, in effect, artificially. So I think the product quality was better and the consumers voted with their pocketbook. And
Gotcha. And that's
I
because
think the same thing is going to happen. We're in the
gotcha.
early innings now of leafy greens.
Gotcha. And that's because the tomato was closer to the consumer. So within a
Yeah,
day the
they
consumer
built a
could eat it.
network of tomato greenhouses throughout the North America, and that allowed them to basically, ripen the tomatoes on the vine and then ship it to the consumer.
Gotcha.
Closer, right?
So when you first started, like how did you choose lettuce then? Like why not tomatoes? Why not some other
Well, I
green?
did tomatoes. I
Oh, you
started a
did.
company called Backyard Farms. I built a 42-acre tomato greenhouse in Madison, Maine. So I'd already done tomatoes, and I thought that no one had figured out leafy greens. The only greenhouse production was head lettuce, and I felt it was a better opportunity to focus on the baby leaf because you could grow different varieties and cut them and blend them. as compared to you grow a head of lettuce, you cut a head of lettuce, you sell a head of lettuce, right?
Uh,
So the market was growing more in the baby leaf area. The consumers were more, they like the flavor, they like the appearance, the texture. So I said, okay, that had not been figured out when I had started. And so I said, this is a real opportunity to do something unique. And if you're successful, you can potentially disrupt the status quo, which I think we are in the early stages of doing.
Interesting.
But, what attracted me was that no one had figured this opportunity out yet. And that was a big challenge.
So you already had your backyard farms or you were growing tomatoes, so you understood how greenhouses work.
Yeah, but I mean, growing tomatoes, I mean, the old saying, apples and oranges, tomatoes and lettuce, for instance, totally different,
Is
other
that different?
than they are both inside of a greenhouse, but the production systems could not be more different.
What causes like the difference? Like a tomato needs sunlight and
Well, it's a
needs
very,
nutrients.
very, very different crop, right? A tomato is grown it's a vine tomato, and
Okay.
that tomato is in the greenhouse upwards of 7, 8, even 9 months, and then you are getting a fruit set a week, so that the old proverb of picking the low-hanging fruit, and then what happens then? You're keeping that plant producing for many, many months inside of a greenhouse. You're growing the plant so that the fruit can be harvested off the plant, right? When you grow lettuce, we're harvesting in 24, 25 days. We're not growing a fruit. We are harvesting the entire plant, right? I'm
Gotcha.
talking the leafy green. So it's just very, very different production system, very different crops. Familiar with both. And so I understand the fundamental differences in production based on what I did with backyard farms, and which was the tomato greenhouse business I built, and of course Little Leaf, which is the leafy green business.
So like a tomato, you have to like pick it each one, and that's
Yes, they're
a lot.
hand-picked.
That's
Hand-picked.
really
So
hard.
therefore the labor and the crop care and all of that stuff, the amount of labor you need in a tomato greenhouse is enormous. And that was also I was attracted by the ability to automate more in lettuce and then minimize the need for all that labor, which is difficult at times to find.
Gotcha. So baby lettuce, you just take it and you just plop it in the plastic thing.
Yeah, the
And
gutters, they're grown in gutters, mobile gutter system, and the gutters, when we're ready to harvest, they're led out of the greenhouse on conveyors directly to a automated cutting machine, and then conveyors bring it to packaging. And so, Tony, next time you're in the Boston area, as an engineer, I think you'd appreciate what we do. Come out
yeah,
and visit us. It's unique in
I
the
love
world.
manufacturing. That's incredible. So like even the way that lettuce is, it's simpler to package, simpler to take out.
Well, it makes it different, right? Complexity is there. It's just very, very different. And to do anything really well, it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's very different production systems other than they can both be grown in greenhouses, leafy greens and tomatoes.
So when you first started, like what were like the difficulties you faced? Was it like the lettuce didn't come out big enough, or did the lettuce start
Well,
dying
you
in the
have
middle of the
to,
process?
yeah, you have to do all the things that a business has to do if it's going to succeed, right? It starts with your production system and your technology and expecting that you're going to get certain, performance, and then yield, right? Yield's very important in production agriculture. And then you have to build the team, right? You've got to build, all the people that share in the vision and are aligned and all rowing in the same direction. So combination of the physical assets and then the people, and then ultimately you need to find the customers who are going to buy the product, and all the grocers do is they allow you to sell to the consumer, right? So if the consumer likes it, guess what? Great thing about the food business, they'll come back next week and buy more. And
Gotcha.
so that's what we've been able to do. Those three things: our production system, our amazingly dedicated people, and then our customer relationships. And we've been able to manage those three things so that we've built a successful business.
That makes sense. So when like the average consumer who eats the lettuce, like when they're at the shelf like buying groceries, like how do they decide to pick little leaf farm lettuce?
A lot of it is kind of word of mouth. Sometimes we might have a promotion going and incentivize the consumer to buy. And then ultimately from there, it has to be a good eating experience. It's the food business. So, if you don't, and if the customer does not have a great eating experience, you're not going to get them back as a repeat, right? And, we started very modestly, in New England with some local, grocers here in New England. And now we're in 8,000 grocery stores in half the United States. So I think the consumer has spoken. They like our product.
And they would tell their friends about the product,
Yeah.
and then
We produce millions of packages a week.
what's like the eating experience? Like they open it, they put it on a sandwich. Like what's the eating
Most
experience?
people, of course, you can, use it on a sandwich, but also, I mean, it's a salad. It's the major ingredient for a salad. And, that's, I think, is the primary use for our product. And I think people have enjoyed our product versus the West Coast. And a lot of that was for the reasons we discussed earlier, right? Just the
Yeah,
freshness
freshness.
and getting it into the store within 24 hours after harvest, right? Which the West Coast guys can never duplicate.
Yeah, that makes sense. They have to travel over the country.
Yeah.
And then like restaurants, how do you get like restaurants to start using the lettuce as well?
Yeah, we,
Do you
we
have to
work
tell
through
each
the
other?
food service distributors and we don't deliver to restaurants, but that's why we go through food service to distributors. And then they then deliver that to the restaurant. And we have an amazing amount of like great restaurant and institutions that buy our product and same benefits that the consumers at the retail grocery get, right? Better, fresher, crisper, great, better taste, just better than the West Coast.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. So this is why it's so important that you differentiate yourself from those California lettuce that's causing all
Correct.
disease now, because it's
Absolutely.
too
I mean, we
separate.
are night and day different. And, that's why we've communicated that to the marketplace. The disease vectors are water in people. And, we basically have designed those risks out of our system, just simply not possible.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then like the people would, then they would separate it out. That makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes sense.
And also, I mean, cyclospora is derived from human waste. So the notion, yeah, the notion, it's a parasite, and the notion that, human waste could ever come in contact with our lettuce, that is just a totally foreign, that will just never happen. So therefore, you combine that with our disinfection process, then
Yeah,
it's just, our product is absolutely clean and safe to eat.
yeah. It's rainwater that comes down, then UV treated,
Yep,
so then it's like
yep,
clean.
yep,
It's like
exactly.
impossible to get the. That makes sense. Huh. Very, very cool. So onto your like overall career path. So you did entrepreneurship before this as well. Like how
Yeah, no,
did
I've
the
been I've been starting and building companies the last 40 years. So this is my latest Little Leaf Farms.
were you in agriculture before as well?
I was involved with companies that I started and built that were involved with the management of organic residuals, including leaves, grass, brush, animal manures, and then via sort of high-tech composting, converting those raw organic materials into value add, soil products and organic fertilizers, and had built companies by the name of EarthGrow. That was one of them that would then package that and sell it to garden centers. And ultimately, the Scott's company, the big national player, bought that company.
Wow. So like when you're going from like one company to the next company, like what comes with you? Like experience? Were you able to bring
Yeah,
like a
no,
team with you as well?
yeah,
What?
you build on the experience, obviously, lifetime learning, all of that. Keep an open mind, and then, of course, there's some timeless things that you need to focus on if you're going to be successful, and it starts with, getting the best people to come work with you. And I've been very fortunate in that regard.
Like how did you or how were you able to get the best people to work with you?
Well, I believe that the key people, have to be aligned on economic incentives, and they have to believe in what the company's mission and what the company is all about. For instance, Little Leaf, we defined why we exist as being part of the food system transformation by growing better food in a better way, right? And I think that kind of represents more of an existential, belief that we're just not a grower of lettuce. That's what we do, right? But why we exist, it's a higher purpose. And I think it's very important to have when people join you, they are aligned on that. And because I think that's very important from a motivation standpoint.
Gotcha. So like when you're first starting, if you have a higher purpose, like how do you show that you have credibility in being able to achieve that purpose?
Well, that's kind of like, how you succeed, right? And day-to-day execution. the focus on the quality of the product, right? Those are core values that you need to embrace if you're going to be successful, right? Great to have high-minded, goals and ideals, but it needs to be married with like incredible execution and a focus on the very best quality. And you have to do these things, they're not mutually exclusive, right? If you're going to be a successful company, you need to be able to master that. Otherwise, doesn't matter how high-minded your ideals are. If you don't combine that with like great execution, you will not be successful.
Gotcha. Well, like when you first started out, like how like what were like the first things you tried to execute on to start building that credibility? Like how did
Well, I
you
mean, when I first started Little Leaf, I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so that's why on purpose I started very small. We only built a 2.5 acre greenhouse. Now I have 70 acres. So I didn't know all the mistakes I was going to make. I didn't know what they were going to be. I didn't know what I didn't know. So therefore, you have to start at a scale that as you learn and said, oh my God, why didn't we do it that way? That you're small enough to be able to incorporate those changes. And then I built my next 2.5 acres 2 years later. Then I built 5 acres 2 years after that. And then I've been building 10 acres a year ever since. And now at Tennessee, I'm building 20 acres at one time. So it's an iterative process. You have to learn along the way. And I'm so thankful I didn't have a lot of money to start because it forced me to really be disciplined and, go through the kind of school of hard knocks and then incorporate those learnings into our future.
so you're like initially you're trying to figure out how to increase yield, how to get the costs
Correct. You have to,
down and
you have to
whatnot.
optimize all those systems. That's correct.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then like that those initial batches too, you weren't like selling it either. You were
No,
still
no, we were selling it, but our yields were much lower than they are now. Our costs were much higher than they are now. And then, as we learn and say, okay, well, this can be done better, this can be done better, and you have a culture of continuous improvement, then in turn you incorporate those learnings in, and that's what we've been able to do quite successfully.
Gotcha. So you're able to even from the beginning, you're able to start generating revenue and selling the
Yeah,
lens, but
oh,
not
absolutely. Yes, yeah, but not very productively, right? And again, we made a number of mistakes that we were at a small enough scale. It was easy to sort of fix than if I had gone massive scale from day one. That would have been a big mistake.
yeah, that's a big mistake. Yeah. So you have like the R&D phase, and then once you have the R&D phase done, then you scale up more after.
Yeah, I mean, I would not call it R&D. I would say applied R&D because we built an operating greenhouse and we were selling, in the market, selling products since 2016. But, we're just so much more efficient and so much better now than we were back then. And it's because we've incorporated the learnings.
And how do you balance your time between learning even more versus like scaling into like more locations like Tennessee?
I mean, continuous improvement is a core value, right? So you always want to learn and incorporate those learnings in the next build. And what we've learned is that people like our product, right? So we're going to be building out more capacity. I gave you the tomato analogy on what greenhouses and CEA have done. I still think we're in the early innings on leafy greens, and we're going to continue to build out capacity.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so for the closing question, I always ask the guest, what's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for you?
Well, I mean, I have to, the kindest thing I mean, I don't know whether this would be defined as kind, but I've just had the opportunity to work with so many great people and the contribution of their time, their intellectual horsepower, their work ethic, their passion, whether that could be defined as kind or not, I'll leave that to others. But I'm so grateful that I've worked with so many great people over my career.
Super. Thanks for sharing.